too little or too late, or right on time. Today, we talk about our timing with our annual cattle sales for the market in the fall. All of the past year's events culminate in this very important weekend every year. Welcome to Hashknife Hangouts. I'm Calen, and my co-host and father is Brandon. Right there, you go. Yep. If you enjoy what we have to
Right.
offer, like, comment, and subscribe. If you're interested in our social media, check out our handles below. Also, a big thank you to our returning viewers. And now on to today's topic, which is fall cattle sales. So what happens? We'll kind of go through a couple things real quick. What happens? What's the process? What are the current markets looking at? Higher prices, but at what cost? Because shocker, spoiler, we are getting higher prices this year, it appears. Some expectations and then plans moving forward. So the process honestly is you typically you precondition the calves. The question to dad will be, what are the contracts this year or no? You gather, you sort and separate calves, you haul them. How many trips does it take? You drop them off, and then you got a sale following that. So we'll start with preconditioning, which is supposed to happen tomorrow, right? That's what you said.
Yeah, we got everybody to put the shots in, their booster shots, basically is what that means, and then wormer and just have them ready to go in the next couple of weeks to be received. And we're kind of doing something a little bit different this year. We've got somebody who we're going to sell the cattle through, and kind of like a broker, instead of taking them to auction if we can. We still have that option, but it's a matter of we'll see what the market's doing and if anybody's going to want to buy our calves. You know,
Right.
we got them set basically with a certain price. Call it an asking price is really what it is. This is what we'd like to get out of our calves. Of course, it's always low, lower than you want, because it's based on the, again, we've talked about this before, on the futures, the cattle futures. So it's kind of take a marker off of that. And honestly, that's what they're doing in the auctions too, when you're selling them in real time without any contract, is they know what their futures are for that day, and that's what they're going to base their price on. So
Right.
really no different, except that we just don't have a ready buyer. We have them available, got some pictures of them, explained, what we're going to have into them and the different types of vaccines and the wormer and when it was done. And then we'll wait for them to either sell them and then have a sale date, or a delivery date, I should say, not necessarily a sale date, because they're sold. And now it's time for when they can take them on delivery. So we just wait until the broker says, okay, we're going to need these cattle on this day. Then we gear up, and they're already preconditioned, which we do that with the other sales as well. But it's kind of on our timing, saying, okay, we're going to go to the sale this day. And your comment about is too early, too late, or just right, it's rarely ever been just right. It just doesn't seem like it's like hunting elk. If you
Yeah.
see tracks, you're too late. If you don't, you're too early.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing. But this way, you do control it a little bit more. At least you can say, well, I'm not going to sell them for this, and try to get a little bit more than you would out of this
I,
live sale.
I was gonna say there's a little more consistency to knowing your prices a little bit. There's less fluctuation in, oh, we could get this or we could be way down here.
Well,
Um,
it's still that way, because basically we advertise these cows or these
mhm.
cattle, and so they're on a website, and these people who have it, they've got buyers, and they say, okay, what weight class do you want? And that's what they get. I mean, they can just look through their site, pick and choose, and then be able to have what they want.
Well, and that leads mostly to where I was gonna go next, but instead of going through the overall process, we'll kind of stick with this for a second. I looked at some current markets leading up to this conversation to kind of have some context, and the previous yearly averages from 2017 to 2020. Understand 2020 was a little odd. It's going to throw a 2020 forever will always have an asterisk next to it because it threw prices up and it threw prices down, and it did
Yeah.
such weird things across all ranges of industries and markets. So understand that. I didn't have any accurate information for 2021, which was last year. But I've got some kind of forecasted stuff for this year based off futures, based off of what's happening currently and what's kind of expected from analysts and people studying the markets currently. And the 2017 to 2020 range for the kind of the northwestern Midwest regions of Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Nebraska, Colorado, and Utah. So you're looking kind of right there on that rocky front is for 500 to 540 pound calves. And this is both
Steers or heifers?
this is primarily steers. Thank you.
Okay.
I did not have a lot of heifer stuff, but I found steers, so I just went with it.
Yeah.
But for 500 to 540 pound steer calves, it was $155 for center weight, and then it was
$150 for 100 per 100 weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
CWT. C. It's funny. It's 100.
Yeah.
100 weight.
I don't know why I always call it that, but yeah, 100 weight. So there you go. 155 for 100 weight. Then when you go up to the next class, which is 550 to 590, it's a little heavy for us. That's why I put the lower 500, 540.
It is this year. Normally we're in that.
Okay.
Sometimes we have 600 pound, 575 to 600.
But it goes back to conversations we've had in the past too with drought and stuff. It knocks weight off the calves, things like that. So 500 to 540 was 155, 550 to 590. So that next 50, 40 pounds up was 156. So it's only $1 difference.
Yeah.
Now that was the last, 2017 to 2020. This year for 2022, there wasn't really good information for the 500 to 540 mark. The closest I could kind of find based off of understanding what's going on, kind of some analysis, is roughly 190 maybe. So that's about a $35 to $40 difference. And then 550 to 590 was 210. So again, the previous one was 155. Now we're looking probably 185, 190. And before it was 156, and now we're looking possibly 210. So those, of course, are dependent upon the regions. I found the same regions, so I tried to keep that same. They were all steer analysis. There's nothing on heifers. Heifers tend to go a little lighter on the prices. And then it was also overall what's available now, what's being, what's the trend, stuff like that. So not exact science, but it appears better. And I know we had a small text conversation last weekend. We were talking about prices, what does this contract look like to the rest? And I said, hey, costs are starting to slip because we're getting closer and closer to wintertime. That actually doesn't look too bad. If you can get a hold of it, take it. And I know we had a back and forth, but that's kind of people understanding our current market situation, where prices are, where they have been. That helps us determine kind of what to do and when to go to sale as well.
Well, that and what's the condition of our cows? How much grass do we have? I mean, there comes a point where you just got to take them, and hey, we're gonna have to trim down some of the cows again this year because the drought and hay prices. So here we go again. And we got a plan of maybe trying to develop some of our hay ground again, and run with a smaller herd. Kind of as we talked about before, change what we're doing. Be a little bit flexible. See if we can make an opportunity out of something that normally we wouldn't have done. That's a bad thing, then try to make it a good thing. Try to make it a little bit more diverse.
And then you said the preconditioning, that's happening tomorrow. So let's go through the process of preconditioning. What you already said, and we've talked about it before, it's kind of like giving them the flu shot. Where are the calves and cows? What do you have to do to get them to where they need to be? What are you going to do? And then immediately following, what are you going to do from there?
Well, it's some prep work. I got to move a head catch over to the place we have leased and set it up and get it ready, kind of check those corrals out, make sure they're going to hold everybody in. And then in the morning, we will go over and gather everybody up, bring them in there, make a sort just the cows from the calves. We don't care whether we got heifers or steers. It doesn't matter. And then we will put them in the chute, each one of them will get a shot of an 8-way, and then our softness 7. So they get two injections, the same as they got during branding. It's just precondition them for going into the sale ring, or not the sale ring this time, but into the place where we're going to drop them off. It's they've got a small feedlot there, and it's kind of just a holding facility, really. And then they get sent onto a truck and sold to somebody who's going to take them up to about 800,000 pounds, somewhere in there, close to that 1,000-pound mark. Put them on grass, feed them out, and gain some weight, and then they'll sell them on to a feedlot that will get them up there about that 1,400-pound mark, and then they go to slaughter. So really, it's not a big deal. The one other thing we do with them is just put a good wormer on them, some ivermectin. Anybody heard of that stuff? That's what it is. Put that on them, and then dose them according to weight, and then we're good to go for another round for next year. Then we feed these cows up and start calving in the spring. So it's just prepping them so that they don't get sick in any kind of another facility anywhere, through the shipping process, that kind of stuff. So
Right.
just well protected and vaccinated so that you don't have any maladies that will possibly occur. You just protect them against that.
Now, once you've gone through the process of gathering them and kind of sorting them just to get them the shots and the warmer that they need, do you release them back out into the same
Yep.
pasture, or do you
Yep.
move them back to the ranch house area where they're closer? And for how long will they be there before they go to sale?
Yeah, no, these guys are going to they'll be there. We'll kick them right back out in the same pasture with the cows. And so it'll be kind of a minimum harassment. It's never fun, that's always the worst part of it, but it just depends on when they call. We may leave them there until we're able to leave that for the winter time. That's a summer lease pasture. And so one of two things could happen. They could call and say, hey, we're going to need these cattle next week. Well, usually you got to wait two weeks minimum. Most guys like 3 weeks from the time you vaccinate until they receive the cattle for this preconditioning. So point is, they may call and say, hey, we need them, the following week on this date. Can you bring them? And if they're out on the lease, then we regather that pasture and then basically wean those calves right there, pull them off the cows, sort them again, run them up that same chute that you vaccinated them in. Only this time we're loading them in trailers, and then we'll bring them over to here, kick them all out into the same large area, and then we go ahead and do a sort by sex, whether you got heifers or steers, and then from that point we load them up, get brand inspections on them, and start hauling. And we should just do it in two big trailer loads in 2 trips. So you're getting close to 60 head, 55 head, 56 head, something like that, I think, is what we've actually got contracted all together on this bunch. So if they are a little bit later and they go into November, which I'm almost hoping they do, then we just bring them all home, and we've got them on our winter pasture, and it's going to be a much easier affair. All we do is then just gather them, bring them right into the chutes here, or the corrals, and run them through the same thing, the sorting process in the alley, and then get the brand inspection on them, divide them up into whatever trailer loads we want, and start hauling. So this year that would actually be easier to do. It wouldn't bother me a bit, especially on the contracted calves.
And why is it that you would prefer to go a little later? Is it just because of that easiness, or because you're
Yeah,
going to get a little bit more weight on them, or what's the
well,
reasoning
both.
behind that?
Both.
Yeah.
It's every day they're on grass is more weight that's going on to them. We'll knock a few pounds off of them, bringing them home, but you're knocking a few pounds on them, bringing them in and putting them on a trailer and bringing them over here and resorting
Right.
anyway. So it's kind of minimal. But you're talking about the different weights and different classes. The one thing we do have on this is what's called a slide. We got the calves that are contracted to, I think I got the steers at 550 pounds, I believe. And if the weights go above that, say they go to 560, then we'll take a 14 cent per pound, or $14 per hundred penalty on that. Then they'll pay us less for it. But when you look at it overall, the slide's just designed to do that. It's just to try to get people to, make a consistency in their calves, because that's what
Right.
people are buying. And the slides, you look at it one way or another. You want to be really maximized. You don't want that slide. You like to hit it right at that weight, but you want those weights to be up there at 600 pounds too. So,
Right.
if you go over that, you're still getting a gain on it, because you're getting more weight that you're being paid for, even at a lower rate. So it's, there comes a break there where, more weight's good. Too much weight is kind of gooder, but not enough weight is, you're still going to get paid for the same amount, but they're lighter calves. You're not getting as much weight out of them, so you're going to make a little bit less. That slide is kind of it's really, to me, it's just a mechanism by which you can maintain the uniformity of these cattle with what they expect to be. And so it's just guessing your weight, and it's kind of tough. Just like the guy and I were talking about, who's doing the contracting. He said, "What do they weigh?" And I said, "Man, I'll tell you what. Some years I'm pretty cocky and I get them within 5 pounds with an eyeball, but there's other times I'm thinking I'm pretty cocky and then I'm 30 pounds off."
Yeah.
And I said, I'd be more comfortable with you looking at him yourself. I said, "How's your eyeball?" And he says, "My eyeball is right on when I have my scale with me." So
Yep.
he's doing it exactly like me. Yeah, some days you're good and some days you're horrible. So,
Yep. That digital scale sure helps.
oh man, yeah,
So before we get on to some of the other parts of the process, you talked about a couple of things that I know people probably ask questions, and I do have one question for another thing, because I have not been around for the last probably 8-9 years for hauling to town. The the first one would be when you go to sex them, and people may be, well, why do you separate them? Well, just based off of sex, the heifers and the steers, they sell typically like that. That, here's your heifers, here's your steers, and here's your heifers by weight, here's your steers by weight. Very rarely will you have it mixed. I mean, I'm sure probably some
I
people will, but it's
I
weird.
don't know. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, and there's reasons for that. I mean, breeding purposes, hey,
Well,
we'll take these heifers and we'll probably take them back. We'll buy them and we'll use them for our own breeding program, or hey, we just like finishing heifers because they taste better, or hey, we're gonna take the steers because they can put on weight real fast and we can get them fat and send them to butcher. But the question
yeah,
is, leading to that, how do you discern between the two? Do you still have the blue and pink tags to help
yeah,
separate?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's your mother's.
yeah,
Well, you were here branding. You saw that. That's how we just keep track of who's who and what's what. But, yeah, you do have somebody, or some people who are backgrounders, or buying those cattle, and they're taking them both, and they don't care, but what you've got, and they'll take them all. But you're still paid on those weights on those animals, by sex. You typically get a little faster gain, more of a gain on those steers. And
because
we finished,
testosterone.
yeah, we've finished both steers and heifers for private consumption, and it's a whole lot easier to get marbling and fat on those heifers than it is the steers. I mean, it's just hormones, genetics. I mean, hate to say it, but ask any woman, she'll tell you that fat goes right on real fast.
Yeah.
If they eat too much chocolate, and it's kind of what you're doing, is you're feeding them some high carbo, um, some fatty food, get that intermuscular fat marbling onto them, and you get some top fat as well. And those heifers will finish a little bit faster that way, more fat.
Well, and people may laugh at the blue and pink tags, but I mean, realistically, it's just so much more efficient
Oh yeah,
because you don't have to lift tails or check under bellies and be like,
right.
oh, that's what this is. And then you separate. You can just go, hey, send the pink
As
this way, send the blue that way.
as it's going through the alley, running past you,
Right.
trying to figure out what it is, and yeah,
Yep.
I mean, we've done that forever. But yeah, having those different tags has made life way easier. I mean, you can, And I've been able to bring some cattle in and sort them myself. And it's still hard, but it's way less hard when when you're looking at something's face,
Yeah.
whether it's a steer or a heifer.
And then the second question was weaning. I know people who may be in the cattle industry, they'll probably say, you should probably wean 45 days out and then sell them, or there's numbers that people always say: 30 days, 45 days, let them wean off and then you sell them. We tend to wean literally a day or two before we go to
Yeah.
sale, if not like that
The
day as
day.
they're getting flying. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the question is, why wean as close to the sale time as you do rather than having them backed off for the weaning process and then sell?
Well, I mean, it depends on what your buyer wants. Sometimes these calves, when they're weaned, say they're weaned 45 days out, um, they're used to grass. They're more on the gain. It's just easier for that backgrounder to transition them right to grass.
Yeah.
They're not having all that. They're not these baller calves that are just crying for mama all the time. So that's really the basic reason. But we're utilizing our grass to the point where we've got a couple of different herds, two different herds in different spots. And if we brought those calves in and weaned them, and then we kicked them out on grass, they'd be close to another herd, and then they'd be crawling fences, and it'd be kind of a wreck. So, and the other part of that is we tend to calve a little bit later. We
Mm,
calve mid-March
yeah.
generally, instead of into early February. So we got 6 weeks left, or 6 weeks of dead time between the time some people calve and the time that we're calving. So those calves aren't quite as big, and they're still on gaining on those cows right to the very end of when we wean them. So there's, if you had another 6 weeks right where you're at, you could be weaning them and putting them on grass if you had the place to go without causing a wreck. And just the way we've got it, we're small, so we don't have a lot of leased pasture somewhere else, which would be very handy and wouldn't be a bad way to do that if you did it. But I don't think it really gains all that much. It just depends. Some people want them; they'll take them as freshly weaned. Others want that 45-day on grass. So there's still a niche there of buyers, no matter where you're at, and it all depends on where their backgrounders, what they want, and what
Yeah.
they want to see filled.
Now we get to the point where we actually transport the calves. Like, we've weaned them and all that. We've separated them. It's all on hauling day. So the question is, do you use trucks, or do you use like semi trucks, or do you use your own pickup and trailer? The answer is we have to this point used our own pickup and trailer for a while. We're not big enough to really need a semi
Yeah.
trailer or anything like that.
Well,
The other
yeah.
well,
Sorry. Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say the other question is that, okay, not big enough to necessarily need a semi trailer, but there's probably not enough room in one pickup or a livestock trailer to just take all of them in one shot. So
No.
how many trips does it take to go? Before, we've gone to Billings, which is about 70 miles away. So 140 miles round trip, one going heavy and 70 miles going heavy and 70 miles coming back empty. And then you're doing the same thing multiple times until all the critters are where they need to be. To now, this year, is it going to be the same location? Is it in Billings? Is it somewhere else? Is the distance shorter, longer? What's the plan here?
Yeah, it's about place is about 40 miles east of Billings. So we got to
Ooh,
go into Billings and then down the
go
interstate
fast.
for, yeah, and right at a place called Park City, Montana. So we'll be headed there. And yeah, the size of the or numbers of what you've got to sell kind of dictates whether or not you take uh, a bring a semi trailer, a pot in here, because you need about, depending on the size and everything, just call it just short of 196 head. Is usually a pretty good number. Just depends on the configuration of the trailer. Some will take just a hair more, some a little less. But we're right at that spot where we could have a full pot if we didn't keep some of these cattle back, or you didn't have some losses. We didn't have the grass shortage we did, we'd be right up there where we could. So we sold off a bunch of cows last year. We're going to sell some again this year. And so that puts you in a spot where, unless you got a neighbor that's got the same kind of cows and the same kind of buyer at the same time, and you can combine into a load, then you're hauling them in your own trailers. And so, that's the world we're at. And so we'll probably try to talk your brother into making a happy day of it, and
Yeah.
coming down and grabbing. We got 2 trailers, so grabbing ours or his pickup and a trailer, and our pickup and a trailer, and we caravan them down there. So that's we try to do it usually all steers in one load and then all heifers in another load. Just it's that way it's convenient for whoever's picking them out. But and I know in the stockyards they don't care. They separate them, and they'll do the same thing down here. But you want to work with people. You want to make it as easy as possible on them on that end too, and have somewhat of a plan and kind of organized in a specific way that it's easy to do.
Well, and part of this is also coming down to what we've discussed, I think a couple weeks ago, was costs in ranching.
Yeah.
You're going to either contract out and pay for the delivery of the calves to the sale barn or the sale ring or wherever you're going, or you're going to do it out of pocket, driving your own. So it's, you're paying for somebody else, their equipment, their time, or you're dealing with your time and paying the cost of fuel, really.
Farmers and ranchers are never paid for their time.
What I'm saying is it's costing your time though. You're not out there doing something potentially
Right.
productive. You're
Right.
losing, a day of hauling on your own.
Well, this is your payday. I mean, this
Yeah.
is so you can do whatever you wanted in talking about whether you're not paid for your time and you're not, or this is the day you are paid. I mean, but you're not getting an hourly wage from anybody. Let's put it that way. And you're not reimbursed for your stuff. I mean, this is just part of your overhead.
Which that was something else I wanted to discuss on another conversation. I prepped notes for it. It was talking about average salary or wage of a farmer and rancher, and saying, which state's better and which one's not. And the best one that I saw, I think, was up there around $60,000-$70,000 a year consistently. But it's also in the northeast of the United States, and you got higher cost of living up there. And Montana, Wyoming, Dakota's around 36 to 48,000 a year for
that's for the owner,
getting
for the
income.
Producer.
Yeah,
but not somebody who's working for you.
Right, for the producer. But even like we've discussed, like the last couple of years, it's been losing money, not making money. So it's been your personal money that you've earned from an outside job, and mom has earned from an outside job to keep it working. Otherwise, it would be, if it were treating it like a normal business, it would probably be going bankrupt or saying, hey, we got to close doors because we can't continue to afford the drops.
Yeah, well, and like everybody else, she's got another job. I mean, it's you're supporting that, but you can only do that so long before you say, all right, we're gonna cut this back to the point where it's very minimal cost. If you're gonna go from 100 head to 30 head, that's a huge drop. I mean, that's almost like okay, we're not going to run this line of clothing anymore, or these shoes in a retail clothing store. We're going to just stick with one thing and, see if that's sustainable. So, it's interesting. It's tough, for people that have huge banknotes. I feel for them because, it's tough. You have to have a lot going on to be able to make it, or a lot of diversification, or maybe even a lot of wives that are working jobs in town. That'd be handy, yet not so handy.
Okay, so we're talking hauling the calves, whether what the cost is, stuff like that. Next is the drop off of the calves. You said you're probably going to go all heifers in one push and all steers in another push. Not necessarily in that order. It could be steers then heifers. But then you're going to go from drop off, and then it'll be a sale, or for your case, if it's contracted, it'll probably be a written check just handed to you at that point.
Okay. We weigh them. They weigh them and then just write you a check.
Okay. So would you, I think this year's a unique process because we've gone over what we normally do, which there's been some videos before, and I can try and put a card up above too. But the question would be, what's the difference between like things like last year that we've shown on YouTube and how you go about hauling and dropping off, and then a sale the following day or the next day or the
Yeah.
couple days after, versus what you're doing this year of hauling, dropping off, and then getting a paycheck. What's the drop off process look like for both ends? Just
Well,
kind of overall.
well, and I haven't done it, to this place before. It's a, it's a private place. Guys they have a facilities, and they can, I think they can hold like 1,000 head or something like that they can
That's
kind of
really
feed
good.
up. Yeah, yeah, it's sizable. Uh, Probably think of it like a feedlot, small feedlot in a way. But and I don't know. I've not been to their place. And maybe I should take a trip over there just to see where in the heck we're going. And I might do that.
Recon.
Yeah, yeah, a little recon, say, okay, what's the best way to come in here? It's not that far out of Billings. On a trip into Billings one day, if I need to do something, just slip on over there and see where we need to go and what we need to do. That way you're not mucking up something, you know. But
Yeah.
really, you don't need to. I mean, you just know where they're at, and you just drive there, and there'll probably be a sign or two with an arrow or something, just put up for, hey, go this way, this is where you unload, and you just basically unload them right in some pens. And I'm sure you probably wait, and depends on what they're doing, how many people they're receiving cattle on that day too. um you're not the only band here in Nashville. So you're going to pull in there. Most likely what'll happen is back up, or have a deal you drive through like you do at stockyards. That's very convenient um, for us, because we'd have these trailers that they can just jump out of. If you're in a truck, then they got to back up into a chute and unload them something high off the ground. But pull through there, unload them, and they'll either weigh them right there and you keep a tally, and then they start dispersing those cattle out, or they'll sit in a pen and wait for the rest of the same to come in, which to me would be kind of stupid, because if you get other people coming in, you're just going to
Yeah.
process them and keep track of your weights. And then as soon as we're unloaded, we slam the door closed again, kind of take a check on what we're getting, what they've come to with a scale weight, I would imagine, and then uh, you're off. You take off again, and then go grab another load, and you keep doing that until it's after dark. That's normally the way those are long days. We
Yeah.
put on a lot of miles, and you know because you're gathering, you're sorting, and the hauling is the time that it does take a lot of time, but it's that mind numbing. Oh God, here we go, just driving down the road. I don't
Yeah.
know how these truck drivers do that. I mean, my hat's off to them. I just I just that's not the lifestyle I'd like to have. But um getting them down the road, and I always cross my fingers that we're not going to have some kind of a winter storm with a lot of ice. And we've hauled like that, and it has not been fun. You hope it warms up. It's that time of year where you got ice in the morning, snow in the morning, and then by the afternoon, generally your roads are kind of pounded off with some of the traffic and truck traffic, that it's a little bit easier going. But I would just as soon have 45 degrees and dry roads. That would be optimum.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing too is like people forget sometimes you gotta go slower regardless because
Oh yeah.
they move around in the back.
Well, and
There's a
if you
little bit
pack
of a
them,
wiggle.
yeah, if you pack them, we try to pack them in there so they're not overpacked, but you pack and put them in there enough in a trailer that it doesn't move as they don't move around as much, and that stabilizes your load. That's some of what your big pots, when you see those going down the road, they've got compartments. They've only got like, well, I can take 9 head in this compartment. I can only take 6 head in this compartment, and they
Hmm.
compartmentalize them all. And your lighter stuff goes up on the top, your heavier stuff goes down the bottom on those big trucks. So you're just not throwing stuff in there willy nilly, and whatever happens to fill up, you close the gate. You try to put a plan on that, and so that you can absolutely stabilize that load. Same thing with some of your center gates in a stock trailer. You generally one has a gate that you can close into 2 compartments and squeeze them in that front one, and then whatever's left over, try to squeeze them in that hind one. And if there's not a lot, then that weight's not over your, or that majority of your weight's over your axle. So it's a lot more stable. And yeah, you're not driving 80 miles an hour. You're backing that speed off, because your braking needs to be better, and you don't want to start, from a slow bad spot. You want to you want to be reasonable about where you're at, and it's just common sense. Sometimes I guess that's not so common though.
Not with people who've never hauled before.
Yeah,
I mean, you can go anywhere in a metropolitan area and you'll find people whip out in front of you because they are not familiar. They
boy,
don't understand.
Yeah, just in a vehicle. I mean, it's crazy. We were in Billings yesterday. Your mom had to go get beautified. I don't know how, she's already beautiful, but say that's wasted. She should be standing here, so I'm kissing her butt like this. But we're going down at one of the main arterials in Billings, and all of a sudden, this car almost, just speeds past and then just almost hits the front end, ducking back in front of us. And I hit the brakes and went over as much as I could, as quick as I could. And oh man, it was close. And she's ahead of us. And then some guy pulls up beside us and had his window down. He goes, "They're idiots," and
Yep.
it's like, oh, he saw it. He was behind us a ways, and it was a ways up there that a couple lights later that he said that, because it made an impression on him, and he was not thrilled either.
Getting back to livestock, the question would be,
haul a trailer a load of stuff sometimes through Billings. That'll separate the men from the boys. I guess that's where I was headed with that. Now you complicate that with a trailer load of heavy cattle, and yeah, it's not fun.
But a longer question is going to be something that's probably, it's more intuition and your perspective on things from the past, and that is, we've got higher prices this year. At least it appears that way. We'll probably get a little bit higher prices. By no means will we be making a killing and walking away with, fat and happy and cash falling out of our pockets. The question though is, what's the cost of these higher prices? Yes, it's looking approximately, $40-$45 more per hundredweight, which helps a lot. It helps a great deal. That's not just for us, that helps for a lot of people. But what's the cost? Because we've looked over the past year, you've got drought. Last year, we had people have to sell off. We had to sell off a lot of cows. We'll have to do the same thing this year. You have already said earlier in this discussion. Then there's also the issue of, a lot of people liquefied over the summer, and there's no more herds. And people are seeing there's higher prices, but now domestically, I just saw an article yesterday. Domestically, the cows, the heifers, the young cows, to continue with the breeding processes and the herds that are already in the United States, there's not enough. We continue to have a high demand in beef. It's not increasing like it was for a while. It's slowly decreasing because of prices at the grocery store, and understandable. But those prices may start increasing even further at the grocery store now, because your herds are getting smaller because people can no longer afford. So the question really comes back down to, we are getting higher prices currently, slightly, but at what cost? And what do you see those costs being? What are going to be some of those ramifications, those results? What are going to be the things that we have to deal with, other people have to deal with, and then also the consumer at the end of the line has to deal with?
Well, you're starting out, you're not on a false premise, but you're almost pushing there where we're not saying, and that's, I guess, where my answer comes in. Yeah, we're getting higher prices, but we're also pushing, $5 a gallon for diesel here.
Right.
So it takes a lot more money. Let's put it this way. I was just at a educational thing day before yesterday, day long I spent with the it was a county extension put together a thing, and they were talking about nitrates in feeds and different feeds, and how much nitrogen you got in your ground, and talking about just the cost of nitrogen or a fertilizer to fix some nitrogen in your soils. And if they left, you're looking at what your needs are going to be for certain, per ton amount of, say, hay barley, some of these grain type feeds. And they said, well, you're going to shoot for 150 pounds per acre of fertilizer of nitrogen. And they said, well, we'll overdo it a little bit because you want to have a little in the bank. Well, the difference from last year or 2 years ago to this year, I believe it was 2 years ago, was if you had an additional, 35 pounds of nitrogen that you didn't use or had fixed in the ground because you're putting fertilizer on. If you looked at the cost difference, the year before was about $890, something like that, 850 close. 1 year's jump just because of where we're at with our petroleum products. That was an additional just over $4,000. So how many percent jump is that? 500, 400% jump,
It's not even
right?
It's not even equitable. Like at that point, are
No.
you really? Is it worth any of that? No.
See, that's it. It's like, okay, you need to pare that back and say, okay, I got to try to get this right on the nose because I've got now $4,000 worth of expense that I didn't have before.
Right.
That's wasted. Yeah, it's in nitrogen in the ground, but it's not doing you any good when it's fallow, right? So you got issues like that. You got your that people don't think about. They don't, really look at what it takes to make a bale of hay. And so now you've got it grown. You've got water, your electricity if you're irrigated, if you're lucky enough to have just to pump the water, let alone on any kind of flood irrigated stuff that's really cheap and labor intensive. You've got that electricity costs going up, more usage, in the base case. Do you have the water? I know a guy that put up 2 pivots this year, couldn't afford to put the fertilizer on, and had only half of the water he needed. Not that he didn't have the water rights, the water wasn't there. So we're in a severe drought area, here. And extreme severe drought depends on where you're at in the state. The whole Northwest is in that kind of spot. So if you're not growing grass, you're not producing cattle. It's supply and demand. You're a business guy. What drives prices a lot of times? It's supply and demand. And so we don't have as many cattle because we don't have the grass. We got some drought, but we've also got the cost into making that stuff. Think about just the bale wrap that it takes to either in twine or in netting.
I was thinking
Just
that too. That it's a kind of a weird plastic. If anybody's never touched it, it's a weird like multi-strand tinsel plastic that's wrapped together to make a twine, or like you said, net. And just that, and I was thinking of all the petroleum products that go into just hay.
Right.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's every step of it has got petroleum product of some sort to try to raise a crop. And so those costs are multiplied. It's not just one cost. They keep compounding to the point where, we're still, again, this year, you're looking at $250 a ton hay. Yeah. We can't sustain that. That's not sustainable.
The other thing too is, to go back to my question of, we're getting higher prices, but at what cost? The other thing too is, just regular inflation is what, 8-9% this year. Yeah. And, you could get increased prices. And we had this discussion about horse prices. We had $5,000 for a fully trained horse for the longest time. It was over 20 years. Yeah. And finally we looked and go, just based off of inflation, this price should be higher. And we looked at it, and roughly, if we're being honest, if we do the proper inflation adjustment like I did, it's actually closer to about $12,000 a horse now. But we're selling them for about $7,500. So we're still operating at a lower cost or a lower inventory rate than what other people would have. But we think, we can get more sales based off that, and we have, and that's a good thing. But you look at that over time, the inflation drives, cost upward. And if you're not meeting that with your equivalent pricing, you're going to continue to lose more and more money, which that goes back to the cattle sales. We might have slightly higher prices this year, but because of the massive increase in inflation over years, and especially this past 365 days, even though those prices have increased, are we still equivalent with where the prices should be? The answer, I'm going to guess without actually having done any analysis, is probably no.
Yeah. Well, and it's getting worse, because you think it's tight this year and your inventories are down on your cattle,
Right.
for instance. What we're talking about next year is going to be worse because people are doing the same thing.
Yep.
We're reducing numbers, and so pretty soon people are going to get hungrier and hungrier for something that they want that they can't afford, and we're not the ones that's getting the money off that. it's
Right.
and it's not the retailer's trying to make some too, but all of those costs, everything, are passed on to the consumer. And again, we go back to the Packers. They're raping everybody at every angle. So um,
Well, and
it
you know
just
what? That's a good segue to a point that I wanted to bring up before we ended, and that's kind of plans moving forward, right? And we have plans and we've shared them before, but also something I saw earlier today on Twitter, because I try to use my prep time to kind of look through some ag Twitter, get some ideas for content, stuff like that. And I saw something that whether anybody likes Governor Gianforte for the state of Montana or not, I really don't care. But he's got a great PR team that's constantly tweeting, putting stuff on Facebook. There's a lot of governors that I think they're realizing they need these PR teams, and they're doing a great job of it, whether you're on one side of the aisle or the other. And he showed something about made in Montana products and how great it is to have a made in Montana product. And to get a made in Montana product, from start to finish, it was in Montana. It is branded made in Montana. And if you can do that with whatever product it is, it can be jewelry, it can be food, like Montana wheat, harvest wheat. They do made in Montana. It's all Montana stuff. Uh, I retweeted for the ranch because we've got our own Twitter account. If anybody's interested, check out the handles at the beginning of the conversation. But I said, if we made in Montana beef, I bet you our sales would increase dramatically within the state. And that's kind of where we're headed too with our plans moving forward, is we're looking to downsize the herd because one, we're forced to, and two, we're looking to kind of innovate by using what minimal resources we have to make a quality product that people can get locally. And if you want to buy it from the Dakotas, Wyoming, Idaho, and especially Montana, you can come to us, but it's going to be limited and it's going to be made in Montana, and hopefully Montana butchers, Montana slaughter, all that stuff. And so you would have a true Montana thing. But I don't know what the process would be for Montana beef specifically. I know they do it for a lot of other things, but it'd be very interesting to see if we could get a made in Montana label for the beef industry for the state of Montana.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been more of a tourist type thing in the past where it started, that people were wanting items that were made here.
Yeah,
They'd come through and it was just that, taking a piece of Montana home. But that, I think, has changed in that you're looking for something that is
local.
of quality,
Yeah.
and that quality is traceable and local. Yeah, I mean, we've
And
got a
it's
special
not
thing here.
easy to get that label either.
No.
I've looked at the specifics to it. People are always like, "Oh yeah, I want made in USA products." I don't know what the requirement is for made in USA products, but I can guarantee you the made in Montana requirements are probably pretty close. If there's a high standard for USA product, I bet it's pretty close to that, because there's a lot of things that you have to go through and you have to prove to the state of Montana, and I think it's the Secretary of State blesses off on your label, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, because that's who does all of the stuff for corporate,
Right.
licensing and all of that too. So um that brings us to the fraudsters, though. I mean,
Yeah.
look at country of origin labeling, made in the USA.
And that's kind of where my head went as well. But
Yeah.
it would be, hey, get rid of cool because nobody wants to be cool, I guess. Um, we'll do made in Montana, man, and let's do it. People start seeing made in
Yeah.
Montana, and you start thinking quality beef with made in Montana.
Right.
Made in Texas, made in North Dakota. If some of those beef industry states started doing that, made in Wyoming, if they started doing that, I bet you we could, as a grassroots through state legislatures, we could start doing stuff like that, and people would be like, "Oh, I know where this beef is from. I know where this
Yeah.
sheep is from. I know where this hog is from."
Well, I think keeping the legislatures out of things is the better idea. Keeping our government out of some of the regulatory stuff or the ability to sell things. yeah, somebody's got to oversee and be a kind of a gatekeeper for, okay, is this
Quality
really
assurance.
American cattle? Yeah, exactly. The quality assurance portion of that, or truth in advertising at the very least, I guess.
Right.
Even for us, it's pretty easy for somebody from Texas, Arizona, to be bringing in some cattle, through trade, on the border. The same thing can be said from us on the other end. We could
Right.
be bringing in Canadian beef, because Canadian beef comes in here all the time. I see it
Right.
on these trucks coming past our place. Um, pisses me off, but that's where we're at. But it would be easy to um, kind of cheat that system. So I think something that's very rigorous and is can hold up under some scrutiny. I think that's a good thing. I think there's nothing wrong with that. If I'm gonna buy something, I try everything I can to buy American made. And the computer's a good thing for that. When you're doing some searches, if you're in, know what you want, know what brand it is, then I can go locally when I go to Billings and try to buy it, or call. I'm in a lot of times on the phone. I say, hey, do you have this product in stock? Do you have it there, made by such and such? And I know it's a pain for people, but on the other end of that, as a retailer or as a worker, but you know what? I just as soon buy American made and Montana made as anywhere else. And there's a lot of things I pass on that are find they're made in China. I won't do it. I won't buy it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're screwed. You've got no other options, and which is a larger conversation for where we're at with our trade and our self-sufficiency as a country. Um, that's a problem. That's a real problem. And sometimes you cannot do it, and it just irks me, and I just get mad when I'm shelling out that money for something that I have to send money to China instead of the U.S.
Yeah. But
But
I mean, it still goes to just understanding the quality of what you're getting, knowing
yeah,
where it comes from, because that's our biggest proponent is knowing that we produced it for you. You're
right,
not getting Brazilian beef, you're not getting
right.
Chinese beef, you're not getting what was it? There was
Well,
a
there's
weird African nation that you threw out one time that we're like, really? You're getting
Namibia.
there it is, Namibia. That
Yeah.
one.
Well,
Yeah.
and it come down to it. You think about it, we're all made in Montana too. I mean, we're a quality product.
Yeah, there you go. Uh Today that's kind of it for the fall season. Dad's gonna, as always, document everything, both preconditioning and sale day. So we'll probably have two videos coming up on that one. Braden will actually be joining us, so hopefully he won't be grumpy and he'll be enjoyable and entertaining for you. Probably not. But that's the process: preconditioning, gathering, sorting, hauling, dropping off, and getting some freaking cash back. Prices again seem to be up a little bit this year compared to the last few years. However, again,
But costs are even
expectation
upper. Yeah.
management, higher, yeah, cost, inflation, all that stuff is getting more and more debilitating to an extent. So it's just kind of an insight to us and what we are doing for fall 2022. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dad.
Simply, we're going to get paid, not enough, same as you, because we thank you as all you get till you're better paid.